call the meeting to order, and this is to look at the, finance, the administrative assistance in the superintendent's office. Question was raised to Sharon about the potential to have some degree of reimbursement for advanced education in their field. And we felt it was worth at least discussing it as a possible addition to their contract. And you really can't call the Mindy and it's Melissa, I believe, who work with Sharon and say, well, they're clerks and staff as secretaries. They really keep the office and the part of the school on the straight and narrow. And so the question is it reasonable for us to consider adding a clause to their contract? I don't know, it has to be as long as the teacher's clause, but the board shall provide for the reimbursement of up to 1/2 the cost of courses approved by the superintendent. It's an area where you have people who really do play a fairly intricate role in the administration of the school who may wish to pursue advanced coursework in the field, and should we not be helping to support that? Leave that open for comment.
So just to add one more piece, there was a letter that Mindy and Melissa had, that Jill had left for me from Mindy and Melissa, making that request that, maybe looking at their contract to implement some sort of tuition reimbursement. And looking at their roles, coming in from a district that was K-12 kind of inclusive, and being part of, although our school, the school that I came from, was 1,700 students total, K-12. We had 4 buildings and we had a full central office administrative staff with assistants. It was pretty extensive. So there was a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, an HR director, a business manager, and then the business manager also had a staff accountant, a payroll person, and a benefits person. And then the superintendent had an executive assistant, and the HR director also had an assistant. So some of them were unionized, some of them were non-affiliated based on the confidentiality of the work that they did. They were not associated with the secretary's union. In looking at Mindy and Melissa's roles, just from someone new coming in, where it really is just us absorbing the functions of HR, our component of the business office. Melissa works very closely with the director of finance and with Alicia over in Mansfield's office on our payroll, on timesheets, on all of those things. That we felt it might be a good idea for us to take a look at the scope of their work. One, from the educational piece, which is, especially this year, Mindy has been talking about how much time she's been spending doing FMLA and HR work. Part of that is a function of COVID and will go away with COVID, hopefully. But we've also seen an uptick in processing paperwork for just regular FMLA for folks who have to be out for extended times for medical issues or for caring for someone who has a medical issue. We just have been processing those forms like no one's business. I think folks went out on FMLA previously. I don't necessarily know how consistent the processing of the paperwork was. So she really had to, we both have attended seminars together, because I'll be honest, as an assistant superintendent with an HR director, I was not directly involved in HR. I was lucky to have a wonderful HR director, so she kept me apprised of everything and I learned an awful lot, but there was still quite a bit of information and seminars, webinars that I needed to attend in order to get up to speed, and Mindy did the same. So, I wanted to bring it forward for us to take a look at what the scope of their job entails now. I think Mindy's job description was updated more recently than Melissa's was. But if we could take a look at the job descriptions and see if those job descriptions still fit. I wanted to float out there the idea of potentially shifting the titles of their positions to being confidential. It's confidential is all over Mindy's job description, but to categorize it as a confidential executive assistant, and then a confidential executive assistant for business, because the information that they keep, whether it's FMLA paperwork, whether it is payroll and insurance information that Melissa is working with, it's a huge responsibility. And we talk very often about that responsibility, that what happens in our office is extremely confidential. And I couldn't ask for two better people. They understand the scope of their work and the responsibility that goes with it. So I think it warranted us, taking a look at it as we're looking to budget into the budget season. There's a lot of work over the next few months that I think that we should start looking at the contracts that have been in place for quite some time, and maybe doing kind of a review. We've started that process a little bit, and making sure that the scope of the contracts are actually reflective of the work that's being done, so that we're budgeting appropriately and cleaning up any issues, comparing them to timesheets, making sure that the contract matches the timesheets that folks are putting in, and that we're not going to have surprises for overages, and making sure that we're obeying all labor laws as well. So the three of us, to coin Charmaine's term, huddled last Wednesday. We pretty much spent the entire day going through contracts and timesheets to make sure that that we were on the right track, and that conversations that had to be had were had with the appropriate personnel to make sure that people are taking their half-hour unpaid lunches, things like that, and just making sure that we're obeying all the labor laws. And very often, one or the other, either Melissa or Mindy, will be the ones to bring that to my attention when they're seeing anomalies or issues coming up with the work that they're doing.
So I have a couple questions. Am I muted? No. Okay. Yeah. So a couple questions, Elizabeth.
Yep.
Oh. So just to clarify, Melissa, her job title that's the business administrative assistant?
She's business administrative assistant for finance.
Okay. Okay. And when we're talking about courses, do you have a sense of what they're looking for or interested in? I mean, are we talking about college courses, or are we talking about really webinars and seminars that would give them background information on HR and FMLA and workers' compensation, or what other things that they might need to know?
I think because of the scope of their work and the conversations that we've had, they're more looking toward college courses that would result in a certification, either as a business manager or an HR assistant. That would get them the state certification that they would need to pursue that type of a position.
I would assume seminars and such would automatically be paid for through the budget.
Yeah, through professional development. Those are things that we can take care of. And many of them, especially the HR, FMLA, because we are members with Shipman and Goodwin, we get all of their webinars are free to us.
Oh, good.
And those we participate in often.
Right.
They're a great resource.
Yeah, and as board members, we could participate in whatever we needed to support our work. We're always paid for. So I don't see that as being any different for them.
Yep.
So that
And
I would
Kate-
think it's advanced coursework for them to move to a higher level.
Mhm.
So the other comment I'll make is Society for Human Resource Management. They are a great resource as well. And especially, and you can get different certifications in HR through that or through them that probably are as well. I'm not putting down continuing education because I think that's very important too. But in certain fields, it's it's not always, you know, that 4-year degree that's going to necessarily buy you the expertise or of what you need. And my years in HR at this point, I really wish I had a law degree.
No, you don't.
Yeah, that's where, you know, I think it would
What do
be.
you think of that, Jim?
Yeah, no, you don't. No, you don't, Janice.
Well, you know, I don't want to be a lawyer, but definitely it would be helpful to be more well versed in that area because you know it's a lot of learning on the fly, and I can appreciate what Mindy is dealing with, especially with FMLA and whatnot. So
Yeah, we discuss it all. You know, there are, you know, at least 2 or 3 daily conversations regarding circumstances that are popping up. And again, you know, a lot of it is really COVID related, and you know, some of the confusion with the FFCRA for however long that's going to be around, which poses its own set of issues. But you know, very often, you know, trying to just hammer out where are folks fitting within these resources that are available to them, and what is the responsibility of the district in supporting that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sharon, when you look over the job description, the work that is processed through their area is quite extensive. Do they have time to take a course or something like that? It would seem to me that it would be very, very difficult to do that. Another thing too is as far as professional development is concerned, I think it's a great idea, but it's the first time I think that I've heard of where administrative assistant or secretaries would be provided with a benefit of that sort.
Yeah,
This is
and
kind of unusual, isn't it?
yeah, I checked the other contracts and job descriptions for some of our other folks. So, you know, this is an interesting district, and I'm not complaining at all, but you know, it's not a highly unionized district where, you know, the district I came from, everybody had their own union. Even though it was a small district, we had a secretaries union, we had a para union, we had a custodians, our nurses, even though there were only 5 or 6 of them across the district, were unionized. And I'm not saying that that's what we need to do, but what it results in is very, very different contracts and job descriptions across all of the different work classifications. And I'm finding that there's things that have been in place for years and years and years, kind of these kind of side discussions that have resulted in these conditions being put in place very informally, but now have been in place for some time, they have some historical basis. So we're trying to tease that out and try and get as consistent as we can. But Herb, to your point, you're absolutely right. There really isn't a piece in any of those job descriptions that address higher ed. The other option would be to potentially take a look at what their salaries are, and include kind of give credit for the work that they do through their salary compensation, which in essence does the same thing without putting the language into a contract that would pull everybody out of the woodwork to want the same benefit.
Now, this is a cost item, isn't it? Something that you're considering for the budget.
I am, and I wanted to talk, I wanted to have the conversation with you all sooner rather than later before I started thinking about where that would fit in, and again, in a rough budget year, what we could tolerate as far as the budget's concerned.
You know, historically, Herb, you have to think that Linda Bro, who had Mindy's position, was in that position for over 20 years. And so as changes occurred in what was needed, she simply adapted. And we now have people stepping in to a very expanded job.
I want to share, and I just finished this. I kind of played around with this document, which is not popping up for me right now. Let me find it. Oh, here it is. Is this on your screen with the
Yeah.
green? Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So,
can you see it?
The administrative assistant to the regional superintendent, is that what you're looking at?
You can just see the top part.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second here. I'm going to reshare. So we did a little research on what some of the, on whatever CABE gave us a list of what some of the administrative assistants to the superintendents earn, knowing that, again, in a bigger district, there's far less, this is going to sound bad, but there's less responsibility on an administrative assistant who's part of a team that's fully stocked with your assistant superintendent, your HR person. And, you know, when you have those folks, an executive assistant to the superintendent really just has the board responsibilities, communications, and being the confidential secretary or assistant to the superintendent. This is a little bit of a different situation, but we wanted to just kind of get an idea. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
To get an idea for what some of the areas have in place. So what I did, this was a huge spreadsheet. So what I did was just take what the current salaries are and put them into the 2020-21 salary lane. This is organized from lowest to highest. And again, I'm going to be honest, I don't know all of the details of what each of these positions entail. So I don't know if Scotland and Basra are part-time positions. There's no way for me to really to know that unless I call them, and I haven't done that. If this is from an earlier year, if we don't have current information, I just said that this was so for Heartland. This is the last salary reported from 18-19. They're probably making a little bit more than that now. I also don't know what the years of experience are.
yeah.
So those are some other pieces that are missing from this information. But just at first blush, looking at where a Mindy and a Melissa fall into the mix, as we look at these salaries, so it goes all the way, it's down from the 30s all the way up. And this is the lane, oops. This is the total. When you think about the compensation that administrative assistants, very often they're like Mindy, will do the board meetings. So sometimes her days, and she isn't compensated extra. That's just, she's given comp time for that time. She very often will do the minutes at home because she's reading people and dealing with FMLA and getting phone calls all day. She can't get any concentrated time. We've actually worked out some deals where, you know, on a hybrid day, she'll stay home so that she's not getting bombarded with phone calls and people coming into the office, so that she can just work on the minutes, especially if we've had like 3 meetings in a row.
So is she hourly or salary?
She's salary. Okay. So she and Melissa both are salary, and they are up here in the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where they are this year.
And how many, do you know how many years they've both been here?
So Melissa, I want to say this is her second year, and I think they gave her 1 year experience. And Mindy, this is her,
This is at
I
least
think
the
she's going into her second
third or
year.
fourth.
Let me stop sharing that for just a second. And I want to share the. Nope, that's not it. I tried to put everything in one folder, so I had one-stop shopping. Also not it. Sorry
Now,
about that.
this money, Sharon, that you're interested in providing for
Mhm.
them, is it just to enhance their knowledge in say PR or in HR or accounting, or are they looking to process a degree of some sort?
So,
Get in a program of that kind. In other words,
yeah, I'm not sure what they're, I know that, in conversations, one is to enhance their knowledge to make them more confident in the jobs they're currently doing right now. The other would be potentially to earn a degree to, and to enhance and expand their experience. Whenever you do that, whether you're paying for credits for a teacher who's going down the administrative road, or any really capable employee who you're supporting with education, you always run the risk of losing that person to working up the ranks.
Yeah.
But,
Well, they're required to have for the position to have an AA degree.
Or
So
Melissa.
to move towards potentially a bachelor's, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other piece, what you're seeing, can you see this on the screen now that shows the tier 1 steps?
Yep.
So this is admin assistant to the super and finance assistant to the super. And this is where they are right now. So right now, this is Mindy, and this is Melissa, somewhere around here. There's something a little bit funky with the steps that she's inquiring with Alicia. She's asking Alicia to go back and take a look at the steps because they don't really match up right now with what the current salary is. So she's taking a look at that. But these are the steps, the salary steps that are in place. And I think, to the point about the furthering the education, that's one option is providing an educational stipend. The other might be, taking a look at what is a fair compensation for the level of responsibility and confidentiality that they have within the roles in that particular office. And that might mean, just taking a look at the tiered steps for salary.
Sharon, what's their official designation? I mean, we have our teachers, professional staff, certified staff. Are they non-certified staff?
They're non-certified, and they are separate from, to a certain degree, they're separate from the other secretaries with their own individual job descriptions.
I share a little bit of Herb's concern about adding professional advancement into this because I think it opens up a slippery slope. I think you start down that, and I think you're going to hear that from other groups who will get wind of this and think, well, why not us too?
Yeah, they'll all want it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I'm not opposed to the idea of compensation, which might you might feel is more in line with their skill set and their own knowledge advancement. That might be a different thing, but as much as I like those two and as much as I'd like to do it, thinking beyond them is where I have a problem. If it was just them, that it wouldn't matter to me the same way, but thinking beyond them,
Right.
and where the door it
Yeah.
opens up, that creates a
For
concern.
everyone, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, and I totally understand what you're saying, and I am not necessarily tethered to the idea of compensation for education. And you know, good old Wayne Sweeney, who was my superintendent quite some time ago, was very adamant, and he drilled it into all of his administrators that, you know, you don't create positions for individuals.
Right.
Nor do we make amendments to, I mean, yes, they're wonderful but you don't make amendments to the positions for individuals either. It has to be because they may not be here forever. It has to be what's best for making sure we have the most qualified individuals in these positions, regardless of who that person may be. And so I try to keep this. Sometimes it's difficult when you're in a people business and you're working with people, but I always have to kind of rein myself back in and say it has to be about the position, the scope of the work that is required for me to be able to do my job to my best ability, and have the most appropriate support in doing so. And understanding again the level of confidentiality within that office between those two individuals is intense. It really is. Some of the conversations that we have to have, and their need to know and understand when they're having conversations with people, what they can and what they cannot share, is essential.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of including confidentiality in their title. I think that's a really good idea. One of the other things, go ahead, Janice.
No, I was just going to say that's a first for me. I've never heard of that. I mean, the assumption is that if you're, from my perspective as an HR director, if you're an executive administrative assistant, you're pledged to confidentiality, and so that's the expectation. I don't know that has to be in the job title. It could be as a part of, you know, your
If you
job.
pledge them to it, then that's fine.
Yeah. But I don't know if that was something that you did in your previous district, Sharon. That's maybe in school systems it's different.
Well, do they sign a confidentiality agreement, Sharon?
I don't know. That's a
They
great
should.
question. They should. And I think that would be definitely a distinguishing characteristic between them and between other individuals.
Right.
It's different when, say, you're a special education teacher. It's part of the professional code of ethics.
Right.
Or when you're any teacher, and making sure that you're not sharing students confidential information. But it's a little bit different in the office staff.
Yeah, that might be a good idea to see if Shipman and Goodwin has any sort of a confidentiality template that they use.
Yeah.
I like that.
Of course, they may charge you to redraft it, but that's how lawyers are.
They've actually been really great.
They are good. They're very good.
I'm getting bills, but they're really great.
That's why Jim can never leave the board. We don't want to have to pay him for our legal advice.
So Sharon, if we include a stipend of some kind in this agreement, where is it? Does it go in the job description, or do we have a contract?
I think they do have a contract, and a lot of the contracts look very similar. It's just the kind of the rate of pay, and they're not that specific, but we could certainly tailor their contract to be specific. which is, like I said, that's the process we're going through now to make sure that everybody's contracts that have been in place for some time are accurate and that they're reflective of what of their salary schedules and of what and of the practices. Because one of the things that concerned me about the salary transfers that happened in the last board meeting when Charmaine came, and there were some really great questions about, you know, general wage increases for a lot of GWIs, resulting in some of the salary transfers that had to happen. And so that to me was a let's dig deeper and make sure that that we're budgeting appropriately for what the salary needs to be for this year. And I'm not quite sure why there were so many GWIs after the fact this year. In that particular case, that confused me a little bit. I mean, some of them I completely understood when we had folks who were, you know, didn't fill positions, or if someone moved from one position to another. But I want to make sure that what we're budgeting for general wage increase across all of our staff is accurate for the budget season. And so this process is part of it.
You have some kind of statement that you put in their contract and so forth. And also, if we do put money in there, or we do provide this, is it if they want to take a course, they have to have your approval, don't they? In other words, you have to agree to it. They just can't sign up.
So it's like if we were to if they were to have access to funding for school, like with the teachers, I have to approve that. If we don't go down that road and just give either a stipend for the level of responsibility that they have as part of their role, what they do then with their own money to further their education would be on their own.
It's a pretty
And
detailed,
if they don't use it, they lose it.
yeah.
If there was an education
year.
stipend.
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful not to confuse the two. And you know, we're either going to say this is just for education, or we're going to say we're not going to fund education. But you're going to get either a salary increase that's appropriate for the level of confidentiality to their work, or a stipend that's, you know, compensating them for the level of confidentiality and the workload that they have associated with their work.
And the skill set.
And the skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's a fairly detailed description of the course reimbursability on the teacher's contract
Yeah.
that, you know, requires superintendent prior approval, and it's up to, you know, half of the cost. So, as well as a number of different stipulations, which something of that nature would not be a bad thing to have in. That it has to be notification ahead of time and so forth. So I don't have a problem with that, and use that as a template.
Yeah. No, that would be a good template, but I'm wondering why we just don't go with the stipend. And then someone has a choice to use that for educational purposes if they want to, or if they don't want to. I mean, there's so, you know, there are so many different ways to get the information you need in this position.
Yeah.
That you don't have to go and sit in a professor's class, you know. It really depends on what you're looking for. If someone's trying to get their bachelor's degree, that's different.
Yeah.
You know.
I
But
would assume that's what they would be doing if they're going to take coursework. And that workshops or such to advance what is currently needed would automatically be paid by the department region.
Right.
Anyway.
I think for the HR piece, and you would probably, Janice, know this better than I would, just because the assistant to HR in Windsor Locks was working on, it wasn't a formal college course, but she was working on a specific certification
Right.
through modules. She had, she would study the book, she would do the test modules, and it was pretty self-paced.
Yeah.
I'm sure she had to pay for all of that.
Yeah.
But it was going to result in her HR assistant certification.
Right. And that you can get that certification through the Society for Human Resource Management. You take out a membership. They have all sorts of, seminars to kind of, walk you through the process, different modules that you can take and basically proceed with getting different certification that is valued in the HR world, if that's what if that's what you're looking for. And so that's just a different route. That's very different than I want to get my associate's degree in business management, or, I want to get my associate's degree in my bachelor's in business management, or my bachelor's in accounting. And I think going that route definitely, helps them progress out of the position if that's what we're looking for. And maybe it is, maybe we want to help people do that. However, they can do that. Well, yeah. I'm not sure that's necessary for everybody that comes into the position either.
Right. Well, and right now, again, Mindy does a lot for me when it comes to HR. On top of getting all of the board information squared away and taking care of that and answering the phones and greeting everybody. There's a lot of different hats that she wears. The HR piece has completely ramped up, and knowing the inner workings of that, I don't think that that's really ever going to go completely away. Yeah. Unless there's someone specifically that gets hired to be an HR person, or there's a shared services piece, or something like that takes some of that burden out of that office. Because right now it seems as though it's it's where it belongs, as far as us understanding our people and what their needs are. But she, her knowledge base is essential.
Right. I think if I remember correctly, and I can go back and look because I do have a membership with SHRM, but for some reason I'm thinking that's a couple of those certifications run in the ballpark of about $1,600. I'll have to go back and look and see. So it is it's not cheap.
Yep.
But it would be of value to them if that's the direction, or if that's the direction Mindy wants to go.
Yeah. I think that, the more that that we talk about it, and if we think about the positions, I agree with the comments that have been made in keeping the education piece separate. Janice, you've mentioned it, and Herb and Jim, in that it doesn't open up a can of worms with all of the other contracts, number one. But it also may make the position with all of its responsibilities more appealing if the compensation is more in alignment with what they actually do for their job.
Yeah.
Now, Shanna, we also, in addition to this stipend, are they due for an increase in salary as well?
They do, yeah, as long as they have steps, yes. Well, there are right now there's steps, and there's they generally, my understanding historically, the non-affiliated folks, all of the different folks who are not in unions get generally what the teachers get.
So they'll move one step probably, at least. And also that they would get this stipend. And once they get the stipend, that would be included in our agreement with them permanently. It'd be pretty.
It's not like
difficult to extract it unless we had someone, if she changed positions or something.
Right. But these contracts are all very individualized.
Yeah.
It's not the same type of situation where you're going to negotiate it every 3 years per se, like with a unionized group. So, I mean, there is the option for renegotiating of the contract on a yearly basis based on, conditions. It's not a practice you would want to be involved in, but if we happened upon a really difficult financial situation, it's not like we have to go back to the bargaining unit to renegotiate the contract.
Yeah.
Another question. Were you looking to rewrite Mindy's job description a little bit?
Yeah, we
Sounds
were
like it, yeah.
looking to make them more accurate.
Yeah. I
And
also was a little bit, I guess I wasn't as comfortable the way her job description was written. It just kind of funky the way that first, I don't know, I don't have it in front of me now, but
let me get it back.
I wanted to rewrite the whole thing when I saw, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I am totally open to rewriting. Actually, a lot of the contracts are very outdated.
Yeah.
And so I would be very open to super slow today. Oh, no, that's not it.
Assistant, where to go?
Where is she? There we go. Can you see this one?
Copy of executive administrative assistant. Oh, I don't have to see anything yet.
It keeps moving around.
Yeah.
I keep trying to click on it.
Seems to be like frozen.
Is it frozen? I'm going to stop
Yeah.
my share and reshare it. So I have all these screens open right now. Can we see that?
Because one of the things
Yes.
that we tried to do is to break out the job description into, after your, general description and your specific qualifications, break it into 2 categories of what the essential functions are and then the secondary functions, so that your essential functions are things that, somebody has to be able to do. We had to do that basically more because of just the physical aspects of many of the jobs that we have, but it is a way to kind of clarify, what's absolutely necessary, and then what are areas that you can negotiate a little bit on.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, because as jobs get more and more complicated,
Yeah.
you have I like the idea of, you had said essential functions, and what were the other?
It would be essential functions and secondary. You can use whatever words you want to use to show that these are the skill sets that responsibilities that you absolutely have to do and what needed to get done, and then there's those secondary responsibilities, like maybe you're I don't know, for some positions you're helping to back up on the telephones, or you're taking notes. You're going to take notes for a director's team meeting or the superintendent's meeting or something. If somebody else isn't available, those would be more secondary functions. I guess.
And those would probably, the secondary functions would be the ones that you would be negotiating if I were to come to you and say, "Geez, assistant,
It could be.
I really need you to take on this responsibility."
Yeah.
And the conversation might be, well, which of those secondary functions may be able to be reallocated
Right.
to somebody else.
Right. Like, and again, in Mindy's position, maybe it is, a lot of those HR functions would not be secondary. Those would be the primary or essential functions.
Yeah. Because I would really, somebody who really, knows and has taken the time to learn all of those intricacies.
And that also then justifies the pay scale too, in terms of what somebody's getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sharon, I assume we have a salary or benefit policy for the administrators, but aren't there some other people in that agreement as well?
Yes,
like the technology coordinator and grounds director. Are they going to be impacted by this at all? Or are you going to separate?
I would separate, they all have different salary schedules, which is really interesting. In that other document that I showed, when we look at, where'd it go? So this is the salary and benefits policy for IT coordinator, building and grounds, and admin assistants. It just goes into their sick leave, their personal leave, bereavement, general leave, their vacation days. The salaries are not specific. Just talks about payroll deductions and
Yeah, that's
insurance.
separate.
Yep. And then when you look at the other document that I had up here that now is lost somewhere in the abyss of my computer, here it is. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see the secretary 1, secretary 2, IT techs, admin assistant to the super, finance assistant to the super, IT network admin, IT coordinator, building and grounds, nurses, etc. So they all have a separate salary step.
But where would you list the stipend for education? Would that be in, that wouldn't be in this spreadsheet?
It would not if we added it in. I mean, there would be a choice to either amend the actual step 1 and the impact on the subsequent steps. That's one way to go about it, or to just make it a set stipend. And again, I like the idea of it not being connected to education, that it's a stipend for the responsibility and the actual work, that the scope of the work that needs to be completed and the level of expertise that needs to go along with it.
Right. Right.
So you just add it to the spreadsheet, add it on to the, whatever
Yeah.
they're receiving.
In quite a few districts in the chart that I had shown earlier that showed the different districts, they would compensate the executive assistant with a stipend for covering board meetings, for attending the board meetings and for doing the minutes for board meetings. Some districts hire someone, someone else, or pay an hourly rate for it that could go to anyone. That's another kind of another way to get there. Although it doesn't really take care of the level of expertise that's needed for the daily function.
Let's see.
So
I can't say I know.
I'm not quite sure where it's going to show up. It's going to show up in the line item or in the budget somewhere, or?
Yeah, it would have to show up in the budget somewhere as either part of their salary or as a stipend.
I think I prefer the stipend approach. I just don't know how, Sharon, you would establish your stipends, for
Right.
what is it going
Yeah.
to take for you to be able to get a particular stipend. But I think I like that idea better because I think it makes it harder for other groups to come back and say, why aren't we getting the same thing? Well, because you don't do the same thing and we don't need you in the same way.
Right. Right. So.
Okay.
So what I can do is investigate a little bit further, kind of now that we've narrowed the scope to potentially be a stipend, to look at, I can reach out to area superintendents to kind of figure out what goes on in their district. I can reach out to those through an email and get some of that information. And at the same time, take a look at amending both of the job descriptions to be accurate.
Mhm.
I'll share all of this. I can send all of these documents to you, to take a look at, and we can revisit it after the holiday. And in the meantime, as I'm developing the budget based on what I get for some feedback and information, I can put a placeholder in the budget, at least temporarily.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Elizabeth, how do you feel about that, going to the stipend route? Because I know you approved, or you were comfortable with the language that's in the teacher's contract. And I'm comfortable with the language in the teacher's contract, but not necessarily with the administrative assistants.
To some degree, it depends on what the goal of the coursework is.
Mm.
I agree with Jana's comment that, providing a support for going on for an advanced degree also provides support to leave for another position. I think it also depends on what they're expecting. What are they looking to get in at more advanced education? I was not aware of the various credentials in the human resources area.
Right.
That's not an area that I work, I'm in. Excuse me. But I can work with either of those quite well. I think we need to do something for them.
I agree.
Salary wise, they're not the best or the worst, I guess, is,
Kind of in the middle of the pack.
yeah.
So just to give you a little bit more background, because I went to the SHRM website just on my phone, and I'm kind of looking at, you can get you can become a certified, they have a CP, a certified professional. They have a senior professional in human resources certification, senior certified professional, associate professional in human resources. There's different categories, and based on what you're learning, or I guess, or what your knowledge base is and what you want to achieve, you kind of pick accordingly. And I think one of the costs I saw was for the certified professional, I think it was $700. Well, besides membership, if you're not a member, it's $900 and some odd dollars. So you're not necessarily cheap, but
No.
because they, recognize those as something that is going to give you certifications that are going to be respected in the HR field. So,
Yeah.
And again, these could be people who have their psych degree or their, some other degree in some other area, business management or what have you, and decide that they're going to go on and get the HR professional as well.
And to some degree, I think knowing what the individuals involved have as goals of further education would be a big advantage to know in terms of planning it.
So what I'm trying to think of how that would fit. I mean, if there was language drafted that stipulated that a certain amount of money, because that's how it is for the teachers. There's only $22,000 allotted each year for continuing education for teachers, and once that pot of money is gone, it's gone. So, it's important that teachers, number one, get their paperwork in. That's why we added language into their contract about the timeliness, and that it has to be approved. And then we have to have proof that it actually occurred. But to work up some language that might include, if we're going to go down the road of it being compensation for education, that it has to be something that contributes to enhancement within the position.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But in terms of if you have an estimate of what the costs of the courses are in general, and you're going to pay, say, 50%, well then, you know, you could establish what the max would be to be paid out, and they would have to be within that and provide a plan.
Right.
And I think if they're that serious about doing it, they have a plan.
Mhm.
So are we now back to payment for education?
Yeah, I think the only part that worries me about that is that it can vary. If part of the plan is, getting a degree, a bachelor's degree in HR, that's going to look very different than getting a certification. So paying half of, $1,000 for a course or certification versus paying, half of 3 credits. And how many can they take in a year? We know
Yeah.
that, with the teachers, there's limits on that.
But we
And
could
again,
stipulate.
you may not have people wanting to come into the position should one of the positions be vacated. Some folks may not want the educational component, but would be more, we might get a more qualified pool of applicants if the salary is commensurate with their skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you don't have to be, it can be stipulated that these are training pertaining to what their job would be, and certification as compared to moving from a 2-year AA degree to a bachelor's.
Yeah. So here's another twist, or maybe this isn't a twist. Do we, does it make sense to look carefully at the job descriptions, rewrite the job descriptions, or to write the job descriptions with what the focus of the job descriptions really should be? And then before we make a decision on stipend or dollars for educational reimbursement or all the above, none of the above, decide based on what the job descriptions look like, based on, well, and again, part of this is Sharon, to your assessment in terms of what the needs are, in the superintendent's office, and what the functions of these 2 positions are moving forward, forgetting about the people in the position.
Right.
Then maybe that guides us in where the pay scale should be for these positions. Because you could very easily, if you're talking about starting somebody at 60,000 or 66,000 or whatever the case may be, looking at some of the pay scales, you could be really, that could attract somebody coming out of school or somebody who has minimal experience in the HR field, say, or even as working in the business, working as an assistant to a pay, or doing payroll for somebody, or whatever in the business functions. You could already get somebody with a 4-year degree that is looking to expand their skills in a setting, in a school setting versus in a business setting. I don't know. It's a different bent.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, listening to the conversation. If you are all, amenable to me putting in the time to rewrite the job descriptions, which I'm happy to do. We kind of have a jump start on that to make it accurate. I can, like I said, I can survey the area superintendents to see which of them have confidential executive assistants. What does that look like? And try and get some information from them, and then come back to the table to say, what does that fit, or where does that fit in some sort of compensation?
Yeah.
Darren, if you're willing to take, what you need in both of those positions, or you certainly will as time continues to go on. So if you're comfortable with rewriting a description in the way of, this is what I need, and this is what I need somebody to be able to do when they come in, I think that's probably a first step.
Yeah.
And then with respect to compensation, one of the, if somebody goes, as Janice has been saying, and they get certain certifications,
Mhm.
does that provide us with the same benefit as if they were to go to
Mhm.
school and get a bachelor's degree or whatever? Because really the focus is, if you can do something that gives us what we need for less money, it's
Mhm.
great if you want to go to school, but maybe we don't pay for you to go to school if a certification is going to give us the same thing.
Right.
Yep. And I'm happy to do that. I think that what I've learned in my short, has it been 6 months? In my short 6 months, is really how much I depend on those two positions
Mhm.
to manage all of the different, there's a lot of balls in the air every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I'm,
they're good.
they're amazing.
Yeah.
But what that affords me as an instructional leader is to be in meetings with Lou and department heads and to do curricular work and to work on teacher eval and professional development and those pieces that impact instruction and impact the
Yeah.
experience for kids. So
Yeah.
it certainly is value served that you have qualified folks in those positions who I can oversee, but
Mhm.
who are squared away with the right knowledge, skills, dispositions that I need to get
Yeah.
the whole scope of the work done.
Yeah.
So that works. That's great. That would work for me, and I can bring those back to you next month.
Okay.
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 Yep. Just not before the end of the year.
No.
Roger. We will try not to put another personnel committee.
Come on, Jim.
before January 1.
Well, not before before January.
I already need 2 of me right now, so any meetings that can be avoided would be good.
Yep.
You might not want to
I agree with that.
I am not going to
Full
argue
agreement.
with you.
Yeah, you need 2 of you, Sharon, as well. And you probably do, Janice, and Elizabeth, you probably do as well. And Herb, you're lucky to, you only probably need 1.5.
He's got
That
2 of
means
these.
that when we
Well, I'm-
retire too, that means we only need 1.5.
Yeah.
Jim, I'm pretty busy. Don't worry.
I
Yeah,
know
I bet
you
you
are. I know you are.
Not as busy as you are, but
It's just end of the year stuff. It happens
Yeah.
every year.
Yep,
yeah.
it's been a weird year too.
Oh, yeah. You know it, Elizabeth. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation and you being open to having the conversation, and I think it's a good start to probably the process that will be multi-yeared in
Mhm.
reviewing the contracts just going forward in general.
Yeah.
Of all of the folks that we have. So I think we're off to a good start with that. But these are the 2 that to me were definitely a priority.
Well, I appreciate this conversation
Excellent.
because I had a certain idea of what Linda's job was and Mindy's job, I guess, and I had no clue how much HR stuff that Mindy does. So this is really good to know.
And Melissa, yeah.
And Melissa too, yeah. And I don't know Melissa as well, so I can only speak to Mindy. But yeah, I mean, they're impressive. And
I can tell you she's a vegetarian.
what?
I said I can tell you she's a vegetarian.
Hey,
Melissa?
Yep. She got me hooked on the vegan lentil soup from Gansett.
Yeah.
Hooked on
Yeah.
it now.
She overheard Sharon say something to me about cooking a tofurkey, and
Okay.
and she asked me about it when I was in there to sign one of the contracts. She wanted to know what it was like, and she had been debating whether or not to get one. So she wanted to know where I found mine, and she wanted to get a
Oh.
tofurkey. So,
Really
nice,
good.
All right.
nice person.
Good.
All right,
Okay. So I
you good
think
for tonight, Elizabeth?
I'm good.
All I know of, and I think that this is a good position to be at. I think we can move forward more. And it does take change to get change. I mean,
Yeah.
Linda was in that position and that position evolved with Linda's skills and what Bruce needed for a
Right,
couple decades at least.
Mhm.
right.
And it was only at the end of that, you know, Mindy came in and Mindy picked up from Linda. And so,
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
and everybody comes in with their own set of skills
Mhm.
as well as their own set of needs. So I think it's a very good discussion because if the position doesn't change in terms of personnel, then the position never changes.
Mhm.
So,
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, well, I have my marching orders. I am
Okay.
very excited.
Just one more thing.
Yeah, I caught the sarcasm, yeah.
No, seriously, it's
Yeah.
this is the stuff I think that really makes some impact, and it's
Oh, it does.
it's been a burning kind of question and issue in just again being new to the scene and seeing the scope of the work that's happening. So you know, I'm learning as I go, and you know, I think this is going to be a really great first step in the practice of getting, you know, keeping constant in looking at the contracts and making sure that they're up to date.
Yeah, and one more thing
Excellent,
to
yeah.
guarantee that you don't have any opportunity to relax and ease into the holidays. They will be
Exactly,
on
no
you
overrated.
and, yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
pile of work on.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
happy
I'll
holidays.
have a great holiday, everyone.
Happy holidays and
Yeah.
and thank you all for showing up.
see you later.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So
Good
do
night, everybody.
we need a
Thank
motion
you
to
all.
adjourn, or are we good?
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you, Sharon.
adjourn. Do we need to adjourn?
Yes,
Make the
we're
motion.
adjourned.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
I'll
Elizabeth
second it.
made an administrative decision. We're done.
Yeah, we're
Oh,
adjourned.
Okay.
Seconded. I'm going to assume we're all in favor.
Right.
Yes.